right, we are here for the creator versus comedian panel. If you could give a warm welcome to our two comics and our content creator coming up right now. Please give it up for them.
Yeah.
Check.
What's up? How are you?
So we have here, these are three good friends of mine. Ben Palmer of Palmer Trolls, who hundreds of millions of views online, absolutely killing it. Catherine Blanford, touring the country.
Yeah.
And Drew Dunn. You're New York City based, right, Drew?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, New York.
nice. And Catherine, you out of LA?
Yes, I'm in LA. I sold out.
And in Nashville. So thank you all so much for coming. And if you guys have any questions or things you really want to ask, feel free to ask at the end. We're going to do a little Q&A too. But let's get started. Do you guys mind giving a little intro about yourselves and kind of when you started comedy versus content creation?
I'm 38. I started doing stand-up when I was
Include the age.
22.
Everybody.
Are you cheering for the old part?
Dude, tell them your height, too.
5'11". O positive blood type.
Universal.
Started doing stand-up, 22. Maybe like 7 years in, I started posting stuff on Facebook that people were enjoying. And someone asked me to do a show out of it, and started doing that. I think I really started building a following during the pandemic because everyone was at home. Yeah. And there was no stand-up, no live comedy, so I started posting more videos online.
Yeah. And by the way, everyone, all the comics up here are going to be on the show tonight at 10 p.m. in the big room. All right, Catherine, what about you? When did you start?
Started in Atlanta, Georgia.
How old are you? Okay.
Whatever you need me to be. Started in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had a pretty solid learning how to do comedy, coming up on the scene or whatever else. And then towards the end of the pandemic, taped a set with Don't Tell Comedy. Didn't think anything much of it, just wanted to do well on the show, you know, versus all the other comics on the show. I just wanted them to like me, pretty much. And for some reason, my clips just exploded and went viral. And then that's when I was like, oh, I got to keep doing this, because that's what launched me into being a full-time touring comedian and no longer nannying. So every day it's just mostly just posting clips and trying to engage an audience and convincing them to come see you at the Syracuse Funny Bone in the mall that just was shut down previously a couple hours before for a bomb threat.
It's too real.
What about you, Drew?
My name's Drew Dunn. I'm 32, 6'2". I started out of the New England scene, like Boston. I was living in New Hampshire, so I was kind of doing all of New England as a scene together, and then moved to New York City coming out of the pandemic. And throughout that time, I was kind of posting content as I would get it. And then I feel like in stand-up, the better you get, the more that you can kind of create that stand-up content more consistently. So, you know, some clips would go viral, and then I would just always try and keep up the pace, be consistent, and I always had a quality over quantity kind of mindset when it came to that stuff. I wanted to be seen as a good stand-up comic, so that was the content that I wanted to put out.
Yeah.
You want to say something on that, Catherine, or you just lifting up the mic?
Yeah, I always, I do like the quality over quantity mindset. You know, sometimes somebody wants to collab on a podcast clip, and you're like, this isn't good at all. I don't want to collab. You know, this isn't my strong suit. So sometimes I'll accept the collab, let it ride for a few days, and then deny the collab later.
Yeah, I guess, can we dive into that a little bit? The idea of quality versus quantity, right? Because I feel like a lot of people on social media do have massive levels of quantity, whether it's posting 3 times a day. But as a comedian, that's pretty tough to do.
Yeah, I think it's like there's different audiences that you can get as a comic, you know. And for me, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian rather than trying to do sketch or these other things and try and have that trickle down to my stand-up. So for me, producing that stand-up consistently, content-wise, is getting on stage. And when you first start out, you're not doing the best shows all the time. Your schedule's a little sparse. You're doing bar shows for 5 people. You're doing kind of whatever you can do to get on stage. And then the more, you know, the better shows that you do more consistently, and you get better as a writer and a performer, that you kind of have that ability to try and do that once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. But the idea of doing it daily, I think you're just going to end up kind of posting something that you're not excited about or is redundant or just doesn't show you in a good light as a stand-up comic. I think it's really hard to kind of earn that reputation over other things. Like I think it's easier to go viral with, you know, maybe a character or something that you like, because you can kind of really hit those niches and follow the trends that are already going viral. But as a stand-up, you really just have to be producing quality stuff all the time, and that just demands you being on stage as much as possible.
Ben,
Yeah.
you kind of have a bit more of a content focus for you. How do you feel about that in terms of like the trickle-down effect? We're doing content that's not exactly stand-up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat with them. Like, you could try to post every day, but it's not always going to be good. So it's better to just wait till you have something good. It's always nice to have like a test audience somewhere, whether it be a live show or just like a smaller group, Facebook group, or, you know, Reddit or something, and then, you know, figure out if it's good there before you post to your main channels. But yeah.
I think when you like start touring and you build your audience and people are paying tickets to see you headline and do an hour, you then start to become conscious of what we call burning material. Because then, you know, if you're posting every new bit you write or whatever else, and people pay to come see you, they're like, yeah, I've seen all this. This is all online.
Right.
And it's also like, you know, you might think a bit that you've been working on is good and cooked, but if you don't post it, right, and you let it cook for another 3 months, it becomes exponentially better.
Right.
And so there is like I think people don't understand. They're like, yeah, put all your stuff online. And you're like, but I don't want to burn it yet. This is my live performance material kind of thing. So I think that's what the birth of, you know, people are like, comedy's all crowd work and everything else. That crowd work was the answer to how do I build an online presence and put stuff out there without burning my material that I'm working on.
Yeah.
But that kind of has become a little diluted and whatever else. Like, you know,
Yeah.
everyone's like, what do you do? How long have you been together? You know, you guys are idiots. You've been together 12 years? What's stupid?
Yeah, right.
That horrible crowd work. But so I think it's smart to find, like, Ben obviously has like an amazing, like, what you've created and like your Facebook comments and like kind of your trolling is so cool, and it's such a smart way to build an audience and have them connect with you, and at the same time, like, you don't have to burn your material on there, and they can come
Yeah.
see your show, and you can do your live show without like worrying about burning that stuff.
I was hoping to get some crowd work tonight so I could post some clips. Yeah, let's do some, sir. You. No.
Yeah, I guess that was another question I had, talking about the sort of changes in the industry, because I think crowd work clips were huge. Like in 2020, 2021, there are people who've made whole careers off of that.
Yeah.
And it seems as if now that's a little bit more diluted, like you were talking about, and other forms of stand-up seem to be cutting through. Where do you guys see that going in the next, like, kind of 2 years, or what are you focused on now if it's not, you know, the crowd work clips that everyone was posting?
Yeah, I think the crowd work stuff, it just, once you're overexposed to that stuff, like when you see it live, it almost feels like a magic trick. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person thought of this right now. And then you watch them again and they're kind of using the same line. And I think when you get overexposed to that online, you kind of see the tricks. There's only so many ways you can roast an accountant that is hilarious.
Any accountants out there right now?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And then you have to
Well,
depend
yeah, like
on
numbers, you know,
engineers.
so for me, my focus over the last year has been to post more content, more jokes rather than the crowd work. I'll post crowd work stuff now if I feel like it's really unique and exceptional and it went really well and I enjoyed it. But my focus has been jokes, because for me, I've only ever become a fan of a stand-up comedian from their material. I connected with their joke or their way of thinking, and that forced me to kind of burn some of that material like we were talking about. But for me, I always try and have some stuff that I save for the live show. So I think if you come and see me live, you're going to want to see that joke that you loved online. You're going to want to see, but if you go and see everything, you're going to be like, that's what he does, and you probably won't come and see me again next year. Where if you show up and you get to see the thing that you liked and maybe a little bit of spontaneity in the show, and then also, half an hour of material that you haven't seen, I think that's been great. And for me, that's just forced me to write more. So if I have to put out my material, it means I have to write more stuff. And some of the biggest pops I've had online is hitting those topical things, those things that are happening in the news or in the social media and things like that, that if I can have a really good take and a great joke and work on it for a week and do as many spots as I can and then put it out and I feel like it's good, I'll get those jumps, and then when they come to the show, that joke's kind of already done because the news cycle is so fast now that I don't need to stay on, a Trump joke or whatever it is for that long.
Yeah, that kind of brings another question I had of like the differences you feel between content creator and comedian burnout. Because I know content creators oftentimes, like you and I have talked about this a lot, where it's like, man, like what can I do that I haven't already done? And there's like a feeling of burnout if you're posting every day or multiple times a week. How do you feel that as like a comic? Do you ever feel that kind of burnout trying to write jokes about things?
I find true joy in writing and performing because that's the good thing about the live stuff versus just kind of posting and the people that don't do live shows is that you get the thrill of that risk of the roll of the dice. Is this joke going to work? And then it does, and that's the big payoff, the dopamine rush, and that's what kind of keeps you coming back to doing it. Where what I feel burnout in is the editing, the clips, and all this kind of business stuff that you have to do. You do have to do this side of the world, and that can make you burn out of that stuff. But as far as writing and performing stand-up, that's something I love for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. give it 5 years, yeah.
Yeah.
My ex-wife used to always tell me, you need to post every single day, because she was always just about making money.
Yeah.
But she's my ex-wife, though.
I was gonna say.
I love the intro to that comment. My ex-wife used to tell me. You're like, so moving on.
Let's talk more about her. A little bit.
That's great. I guess, do you have a difference in how you feel in terms of building an audience online versus building an audience in person? Because like the older versions of stand-up, oftentimes people would just go connect with people in real life, and then they would come and their audience would build year after year. But now there does seem to be this other route where it's like you become a content creator that showcases or markets your stand-up. And Ben, I mean, like you also have a very successful content business in general. Do you guys feel like there's a difference in how you build an audience for an online targeted group or a like in-person stand-up group?
I think you have to be doing all that stuff at the same time. I think the difference is now it's harder to get people to come out and see you live if they don't know who you are from online, just because there's so many more people touring and doing shows that to even get a weekend at the club is much more competitive now than it used to be, because they're going to go look at your Instagram numbers and your ticket sales and all that kind of stuff, and if that doesn't match up first, you might not even be able to get into that rotation to build that live audience in the first place.
Yeah.
And a lot of times too, I mean, what really, it was the live audience, but it was also albums. Albums had a much bigger impact back in the early days of stand-up because that was just the way you got fed that content.
Yeah.
Has anyone here listened to a comedy album?
Special an album or anything? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to woe is me, but it is really difficult right now because our bread and butter is touring. Our bread and butter is actually ticket sales.
Yeah.
And you'll notice, like, actually sometimes you can have a huge following on TikTok, but sometimes TikTok doesn't equal ticket sales. And at the end of the day, like, yes, we love putting out clips, etc., but we're putting out clips to build an audience to sell tickets on the road so that we can keep building our hour. We're not doing it because we want,
the viral
12-year-olds in Italy to like our TikTok.
Yeah, and
but
that's a good point, too.
Yeah, but the frustrating thing is,
audience.
right, they're like, come tour Europe. I'm like, I can't sell out Kansas yet, all right? Give me a second. But the frustrating thing about that is you could be an amazing comedian with a incredibly artful built hour, but if you don't have the ticket sales now, you're not getting into the club for people to see you because there's a TikTok star that can sell out the club, and guess what? Their show sucks.
Right.
Because they're, a lot of times they were a TikTok star. They're creating that kind of like quick cut, like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, here's the character, cut. And which is funny and everything, and that's its own art form. But then they go, oh, I can do stand-up now because I can do ticket sales. And they get onto a stage, and that's a completely different skill, and the show kind of sucks. And then those people go, and they might be like a venturing new stand-up comedy fan, but the first experience they have with comedy is going to see a TikTok star, and they go, that sucked. I'm just going to stay home on my couch and get back on TikTok. And but that's what we're battling right now as far as like ticket sales and everything, because why would a club not just book the TikToker who can sell out even if the show's bad?
Yeah, and that's
this is actually just a therapy session for stand-ups, by the
Sorry.
way. This is us airing grievances.
Yeah,
Just
well,
saying.
I was gonna say it's easier than ever to reach an audience now. It used to be really limited by gatekeepers and people that would put you on TV or give you an album or a special or whatever it was. Now you can reach as many people as ever. The hard part is to make them care enough about you to get a babysitter and come to the show and buy a ticket and a drink and all the stuff that you have to do. So what do you do to engage with your audience enough to make them care that much, to come out on a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday to come and see you live? That's the gap that a lot of people, I think, struggle to jump over.
Have you ever been? There's one thing you want to say on that? Anything you want to say on that, or?
One more thing about your ex-wife.
Yeah, my ex-wife, she would completely disagree with you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But to that, like, yeah, it seems as though there is a difference in creating something that makes people love you enough online versus in person. Has there been anything that you've done that has led to that, like a clip or a specific thing that you're like, oh, this really touched something for people and brought them out in real life? Was there any clips you remember specifically?
Yeah. That's how I sell tickets. If I have a show, posting like a flyer doesn't do anything.
No.
But posting a video that they like and then saying, oh, by the way, I'm going to be in Austin tonight, does everything.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I found, like, you know, you always want to give them new material and not do the same thing you're doing online, but sometimes they come to see that specific bit too. So I try to do a balance of stuff they haven't seen and then do some like the classics, because they're probably bringing like their friends too or their family. They're like, I want you to see this bit that I like, you know?
Yeah. Do you guys feel that as stand-ups, that sometimes people want to see you like do something that they've seen you do online? Because that's new for stand-ups for sure.
Yeah. If you feel like you're like, this isn't an iPod. You can't click through and pick your bit. But then you're like, I think it is. I've learned if you start putting out kind of niche bits that people are like I talked about, like growing up I was a horse girl, but I didn't have a horse, so I just had to be a horse. And then people started coming out being like, I was a horse girl, I connected to that. Or, you know, like if you find, I've always said, like, if you look at yourself like your center is a bubble, right? And you have little webs and you do your other little bubbles around you, you're like, what are my other little bubbles or whatever else?
Yeah.
And if you start to write and put out like bits and content that are kind of make you, you know, your little makeups that people are like, oh, I relate to that, I get that, or whatever that is, that's how people will then start following you and fall in love with you and then want to come see more of that.
Interesting,
Yeah, and then they have a better chance to go viral when you hit those niches. And sometimes, like, you'll write a joke that goes crazy viral online, but it doesn't really work in the room as well as, like, your best joke or your closer.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, for example, of the horse girl, there might be 2 horse girls in the audience tonight, but there's a million of them on the internet.
Right.
So you're going to be able to find all of them with that joke, where most people might not connect to that in the live sense.
Yeah.
Some shit doesn't work on a video, or it works on a video, but it doesn't work live.
Yeah.
The live is always a different animal,
Yeah, I've always said I'm a TikTok comedian. I write for TikTok, not for the room.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is sort of interesting when you talk about comedians versus creators is the business aspect of being a comedian versus being a creator. Like you were talking about this earlier, Catherine, of like the bread and butter of a content creator is very different than the bread and butter of a comedian. Do you guys feel like you're able to dive into the sort of content creator side, whether it's through sponsorships or that sort of thing, or do you really mainly just use it as a marketing tool? I mean, I know, Ben, like you're more on the content creation side where sometimes you do get paid to do certain things. Like, how does that play in how you're trying to build your career?
I mean, I think that there's less of that, especially if you're focused on putting out stand-up comedy content. You know, I'm not gonna, if somebody approaches me and they're, you know, HelloFresh wants me to write a HelloFresh joke, I'm not gonna do that, you know.
Bro, everyone has a price.
Well, we'll talk. If anyone from HelloFresh, I love the product. This is actually a HelloFresh ad. Use promo code SVC.
Look right into the camera.
Yeah, we're filming this. It's going to be out online in 10 days.
You go, I swear I'm not going to do that for HelloFresh.
Yeah.
Even though their bananas are on sale.
You've never used HelloFresh?
It's like you're saying with the podcast, though. Like someone wants you to collab, you do it for a couple of days, then you take it down. Same with HelloFresh. A couple of days, take that thing off.
Well, I think podcasting is that world where comedians get involved with brand deals and stuff like that. Is in the world of podcasting. A lot of comics comics have podcasts now, and that's kind of a bridge into that, being able to put out more consistent content and do those collaboration deals. But if for just stand-up, no, it's really just is a marketing tool that allows you to reach a lot of people, and then all of those opportunities come on the back end from touring and ticket sales and the connections that you make.
Mm-hmm.
I think podcasting was another answer to building your audience and being able to put out podcast clips and content without putting out material that you're just constantly burning. And I've always been get the sponsorships for the podcast or whatever else, but don't make it the sole. It's such an immediate unfollow, and it puts a bad taste in your mouth when you see somebody constantly pushing out brands and everything else. If you're not an influencer, if you're a comedian or whatever else, and that's your thing, I would rather not sell out and be pushing a bunch of brands and know that I won't lose followers, and in the end I'll probably end up making more money by growing my following.
Yeah.
By not pushing a bunch of brands all the time.
Because I think a big part of comedy is being authentic and being yourself. And the second you go, hey, use this, you lose all kind of credibility with your audience.
3 months later, that company's in a scandal or something like
exactly.
that.
Yeah, Blue Chew. What?
Yeah.
Kind of bringing it back to the beginning of your careers, what, when you were starting, made you feel like this was actually possible? What led to the belief that you had both in yourself and also this as a career?
I think now more than ever there's a path for comedy, so you can, it's not like 20 years ago where you're not really sure what the end goal is. Now you can kind of see people having success around you, so it does feel like a career, especially if it starts going well at the start.
What is that path that you see?
I mean, I think for me it was always be as funny as possible, get undeniably funny, and then sell that. You have to be able to market yourself. I mean, I started in Boston, and there's some of the funniest people that you've never heard of that still tore that New England scene, and that was the last thing I wanted to be. I grew up around those examples in comedy that I was like, okay, how do I be as funny as that guy, but do the other thing too, and allow people to kind of see what I'm doing? Because a lot of it turns into, if you're not putting yourself out there, you're just doing the same hour that works. You can get by doing what you do, and you're not really growing yourself as a performer. So, for me, when I first started, it was I got off to a pretty hot start in comedy. I felt like I had some good jokes early on. I would go from open mics and then get offered to do small bar shows and then try and audition for the clubs, and then you would host. And from doing that, you kind of meet all these people that are on the next rung of comedy from you, and then you can learn a lot from that. And then it was this transition. I think COVID was a big part of it, of really having online be the predominant way that you were doing it. There was a few people that were really doing that before.
Yeah, I think Andrew Schultz was very big in that.
Yeah, exactly.
It was very much a shift from before COVID. It was who the industry dubbed as the darlings. It was, did you get a Comedy Central half hour? And then the clubs were just we'll book whoever the industry tells us to, and then people will just show up because they want to go see comedy that night. Yeah. Now it's a complete different shift, and you don't need the industry at all. Yeah. You can make it completely on your own. And look at Trevor Wallace. He was never an industry darling. There was no networks or anything being push this guy. He just made sketches and made his own content, and now he can sell out every club in a whole weekend. He should probably be doing theaters at this point.
But I think a good point about Trevor Wallace is he was doing stand-up the entire time, too. He wasn't a guy that had this hard transition from never doing stand-up comedy to then having an agent come in and be like, hey, we got to get you on the road because everybody sees dollar signs.
You can make money from the,
exactly, and the agent wants a boat, and you want a boat, so it's why wouldn't we do that?
Right.
And comedy's really hard to get good at. You can kind of put on a play for 15 minutes and make it feel like it's okay, but the hype of, oh my gosh, that's the guy, is going to fade really fast, and then you're going to be left with what's the act, what's the show that they're here to see. And
the substance.
I think a lot of it is they'll come and see you once. If, like she said, if that show's not good, they're not going to come back and buy it again. But there's going to be another influencer or another creator or another comic that they find that they can then go to instead. So that's why for me the focus has always been be really good at this, because that's how you create longevity and not just be this flash in the pan that an agent comes and squeezes the lemon and then throws it out and looks for another lemon.
Yeah, and I guess back to the belief, Ben, was there any moment that you had where you're like, oh, this is where I feel like I can do this? Where did that come from for you?
Your ex-wife. It's a doubt. There's doubt in every time, but I don't know. Maybe when I started selling tickets, then I was like, okay, this is going upwards. But for a long time, there was nothing, And so it was just, you have to have some self-belief.
Yeah.
I don't know how long that was going to last, though. It went for maybe 10 years before anything started happening.
Okay.
But I don't know. If things didn't start happening, I'd probably be digging holes somewhere.
What, dude? Ben was ripping the open mics in Atlanta. I remember him.
I was at every open mic.
Every open mic, just ripping it up.
I still go to open mics all the time. But, yeah, I don't know. You have to have belief in yourself, I guess I would say. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Almost to a delusional level, I would say.
Definitely.
You have to have this kind of internal...
For real, though.
That you can like really do this and overcome anything and feel like you're maybe even better than you are at times, so that you ask for that opportunity that maybe you're not ready for, and kind of keep pushing
That's solidly where I'm at in my career. A very delusional level of asking for opportunity.
That's
if you look
great.
at
So smart.
your performance from 10 years ago now, you'd be like, man, I was not good. But back 10 years ago, you're like, I'm great.
Yeah.
I'm so good at this. I'm doing, that went really well.
Yeah.
The tail of the tape is always recording the performance and then listening to it afterwards, and you're like, that didn't go as good as I thought it did.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
So the delusion is definitely there. Probably still is there. Like, I feel like we're doing really well tonight or today.
Yeah, we're killing it.
See, I don't even know what it's
Yeah.
tonight today.
Yeah.
To me, this is sold out. Okay? To me,
You guys good in the back?
people are,
How we doing?
They're shoving in the back. I'm like, guys, be safe, okay?
No,
just
you can't.
be safe. Just
You
be
can't
careful.
rush the stage. Relax,
Yeah, we're
ma'am.
all still humans at the
Ma'am?
end of the day.
All right, we got one more, and then open up to any questions you guys might have. And if you don't have any questions, then I'll just keep asking them for another 10 minutes. But was there anything you guys had that was your sort of favorite piece of content versus your favorite joke? You touched on this earlier, how sometimes those are two different things. But do you remember the kind of the first joke you wrote that you're like, that's really good. And also, this is a clean show, clean audience, so make it the clean one. Tonight is a clean show, by the way. And then on Sunday, that's already sold out, but we have a faith-based comedy show on Sunday, too, which will be in this room.
I didn't see that in my contract, so I'm just going to do whatever.
Yeah. But did you guys have that kind of like favorite piece of content that you made or favorite joke that you had that sort of sparked that initial like, this is going to work?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would, for a while, I would start my shows just pretending to be a British comic. So I would just go on stage.
I genuinely thought you were British.
Yeah, the first time we met,
As you started talking, I was like, this son of a bitch isn't...
Yeah.
Sorry.
What
I
did you
literally just said
off
clean.
the show. Off the show.
Yeah, I just
No,
clarified.
in Britain, that's
That's
like,
actually
they
a
call
compliment.
children that. It's
Yeah,
a
it's a
clean word in
compliment in
Britain.
Right.
my fake culture that I don't
That's
have.
clean in Britain. That's right.
That right there is the mind of a comedian. You tell them to do one thing, and they will do the exact opposite as
Yeah.
soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, it goes right in your head. You're
Catherine,
like,
the show tonight is incredibly dirty. Bring your dirtiest material.
Well, now the door's open, we can say whatever we want. So, yeah, so I would do that, and then I would, do some jokes, pretending to be a British comic, and then reveal maybe 3 or 4 minutes in that I wasn't. And that felt like something really special that maybe not a lot of people could do or would do. It felt like a risk every time that I could be called out or mess up.
Did it
or
ever
something.
not go well? Did people ever not like
There was
it?
a couple times where immediately someone was like, "You're not British," and then what I would do would commit for the rest of the show to be British for the rest of the set. Oh, I'm not. Oh, really? Yeah, go on. Where are you from? And
Do
then
you know anything about England? Do you know cities?
I've never been there. Yeah. And then, but to put that out online was tricky because a lot of times you get 5 seconds with people. So they're like, British comic, move along. Or they'd be like, oh, British comic, and watch it, and then be like, oh, what? That's not a British comic.
Well, I have that right now where, like, the only content I have online is me pretending to be a fake French reporter and sneaking into political events or other events and just interviewing, like, real people like Marco Rubio or whoever as this fake French reporter.
That's
And
amazing.
so, like, not huge, but the 20,000 people who follow that guy think he's real.
That's
and I'm trying to
awesome.
figure out how do I break it to this audience that
Oh, you're in too deep now. You gotta
I'm
get
not that guy.
You gotta get a
Like-
French passport. You gotta go all in.
Yeah.
you got to
There
get
you
a
go,
French
this Hannah
brand deal.
Montana hat.
Is it Anna Montana? Yeah. And Catherine, what about you? Was there a joke
Dude.
or a piece of content that really hit for you originally?
Yes, and it was so painful. That Don't Tell set, I remember this wasn't even a bit I was planning on doing during the set. I made a reference. I was recording the show in San Diego or Santa Barbara, and I made a reference about Kroger, and I was like, oh, you guys don't know, and I said I was from the South, and I accidentally went into this bit, one of the first bits I ever wrote about my parents being cousins, and yeah, so, and then, and And the second half of the bit I actually really like because it was when I found out, I was like, I wish I would have known. You know when you were in school and you had to say an interesting fact about yourself? And that was the part I liked about the joke. Whatever. So when they started clipping up that set and putting it online, I remember I was at Limestone Festival with a bunch of comics, and the first clip they put of me was my bit about my parents being cousins, and I was like, oh, this is so hacky. They didn't even put the second part of the joke that I think is the creative part.
Yeah.
It's just the first part, and I was like, this is so hacky. Like, everyone's going to be like, you're such a loser, Catherine, you idiot, stupid idiot. And
Good language.
yeah, and it
really appreciate it.
I really reeled it in.
it exploded.
Yeah,
The
that hit
clip
like
did.
20 million views, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then people, like, I was selling tickets off of that. People, first of all, they kept thinking they were going to come see like a Jeff Foxworthy comic, and they were quickly surprised. But I just think it's interesting. Sometimes I'm like, the bits I love the most, I think, are the most creative. Sometimes they do fine online, but you find out the bits that do really well online are maybe more the surface level ones because the world is a little bit more surface level than you
Yeah.
want them to be. And sometimes you just like have to bite the bullet